Welcome into another edition of Prep Picks. Heather Williams alongside Casey Getz and Steve Wilmot of ESPN Tri-Cities and TriCitySports.com. Well, there is now a tie atop the leaderboard this week. Thank you very much, North Greene, for that. Things could really get interesting this week because there are a lot of super competitive games, a lot of district championships being decided this week on the Tennessee side of the state line, and for all intents and purposes, one in the Virginia side as well. Casey, let's start with this one. Johnson County coming off that loss to Holston, playing at Unicoi County. Yeah, I believe if I understand this right, and Steve did a good job on his website kind of breaking everything down. I saw that, but I think if Unicoi County wins, potential for a three-way tie for this region championship, and I believe the Blue Devils would get the #1 seed because the tiebreaker, Steve, is total wins, correct? Correct. Yes, okay, so Unicoi County has a chance to be first or third. There's no in-between. Obviously, none of us picked Johnson County to lose last week to Holston. Congratulations to the Cavaliers. Is the absence of Juan Mejia, was it felt more after they had a week? They got through that Gatlinburg-Pittman game. Obviously, I'm going to change my mind on this. I think if they would have won last week, I would have probably stuck with them. But Unicoi County at home, I'm going to go with the Blue Devils. I think they get that three-way tie. And then Johnson County still would get a home playoff game if that happened, but they would fall to the 2 seed.
Yeah, Unicoi County kind of snuck in that game on Monday night against Hancock County, thinking about that three-way tiebreaker scenario. I think the Blue Devils would have got the #1 seed even without that extra additional win. It just breaks the tiebreaker sooner in the sequence. Both these teams, as you mentioned, playing without significant offensive weapons. Garrett Sellers also lost for the season for the Blue Devils. You mentioned Mejia out for Johnson County. Grindstaff came in and played well in Mejia's absence last week, but the Johnson County defense coughed up over 300 yards rushing to Holston. Unicoi County got a stable of backs as well, quarterback Colby Jones and those receivers. I'm with Casey. I think had Johnson County won last week, I probably would have stuck with the Longhorns, but something worries me about that defense. Unicoi County's offense is really rolling. I like the Blue Devils.
You talked about the rushing offense, but they actually can sling the ball around a ton, too. I was at that game on Monday against Hancock County, and I know Hancock County is not the greatest of competitions to compare it to. Offense looked darn impressive. I'm going to make it a clean sweep and go with Unicoi County. Most years, this would be the marquee matchup, but both teams, there's combined 4 losses in this game going into this week. Of course, one of Greenville's has a little asterisk next to it, but a huge game nonetheless. Elizabethton at Greenville. Steve, we'll start with you.
Well, you look at Greenville. The only loss on the field by the Green Devils came to Alcoa. Alcoa last week won at Maryville, which had been ranked 2nd in Class 6A. Alcoa's only loss was to open the season at Ravenwood, which beat Oakland in 6A and ascended to the #1 spot. So all these sports writers across the state, they're still giving me grief for voting Greenville #1 in 4A. Just get off my lawn, okay? The Green Devils are that good. And if you go position by position and compare the personnel here with Elizabethton, it's a big advantage for Greenville, I think, and I think the Green Devils win.
Yeah, certainly. I think a couple years ago, there was a game where Greenville heavy favorites in this one, but Coach Witten and the Cyclones, they pulled it out in Burley Stadium. Elizabethton had a bye week, extra time to get ready, but I believe that team had Bryson Rollins on it a few years ago. They pulled that big upset. No disrespect, but Bryson Rollins is not on Elizabethton anymore. He was just someone who galvanized that team and found a way to win football games. They don't quite have that. I think there's just too much talent, too much speed for Greenville. Elizabethton will do something to keep it close for a half, 3/4, but I think Greenville pulls away and gets the win.
Yeah, you kind of stole my thunder. I think that there is just another gear no matter what the competition level is on either side of the ball when these two teams play each other. They always play their best games of the year. I think Elizabethton does keep this close, but I think Greenville gets the win. The Friday night rivals game this week, Dobyns-Bennett at Science Hill are actually technically on the campus of ETSU. Casey is going to be on the call for this one, so you get first take.
Well, looking forward to this one. Obviously, last year we did not do the game, went to overtime. 2 years ago at Science Hill, had that incredible finish of the 12 seconds left. Science Hill scores the winning touchdown. So the last 2 years have been amazing contests between these two. 7-2 Dobyns-Bennett, 7-1 Science Hill. Talking to both coaches earlier in the week for Joey Christian, he said first down success on offense is going to be big for Dobyns-Bennett. For Science Hill, Stacey Carter said they turned the ball over way too much last year against Dobyns-Bennett. I just think Science Hill, with those 4 running backs that they have, they really don't have to throw the ball as much. I think they just have too many weapons. If Science Hill can play a relatively clean game, I think they get the win over Dobyns-Bennett, which would be, I believe, the 12th of the last 13 times.
Okay, so you wave at me through the windows over at William B. Greene Stadium. Dobyns-Bennett had dominated this series, winning 19 in a row at one point, but since then, Science Hill, 11 of 12, including the last 5. Dobyns-Bennett, for it to be successful, has to be able to run the football. If the Indians cannot run the football, it's not going to be a pretty night for the Tribe. Tegan Begley, that junior running back, has 340 yards on the ground his last 2 games. Only a blowout win over Crockett probably kept him from going back-to-back 200-yard games last week. But Tracy talked about this Science Hill offense. Running back, they have speed, they have power, they have depth. Wide receiver, speed, athleticism, depth. Then you throw inside in Corbin Lazier. Quarterback Spencer Taylor does a great job, doesn't put the ball in peril, very smooth. Had I not given away a 2-game cushion in the last couple of weeks, I would have saved some face. But this is a competition. I'm still competitive at my old age, and so I got to stay up here. They've already picked. She's going to pick Science Hill too, so I'm taking the Toppers.
You think I'm going to pick Science Hill? Well, here's what I know about this. Every time you think you know what's going to happen in this rivalry, something crazy happens. There was a few years ago where Dobyns-Bennett looked like they were the prohibitive favorite to win this game. Science Hill came and got them. Last year, you thought that Science Hill was the prohibitive favorite. Dobyns-Bennett came up and got them. This year, you look at everything on paper and you think Science Hill is the favorite. And I agree. I think they're the favorite. I am going to pick Science Hill this week. I just had to make this interesting a little bit, right? Let's go across the state line to the Commonwealth of Virginia, where there are 2 weeks to go in the regular season, but teams absolutely positioning themselves for the playoffs, starting with the big one between Thomas Walker and Twin Springs. Steve, you're up first.
Yeah, certainly a Region 1D playoff elimination game between these two. Twin Springs last week, Bryce Parks rushed for 133 yards and 3 touchdowns. You look at the common opponents, pretty common between the two. Twin Springs lost to Castlewood, but Thomas Walker beat Castlewood 39-0. I think the overall Thomas Walker offense averages about 7 more points than does Twin Springs. I think that's the difference in this game, a touchdown difference. I'll go with the Pioneers on the road.
The last 2 weeks, both of these teams lost decisively to Eastside. Thomas Walker, I believe, 7th in the playoff standings. Twin Springs, I think, is 10th, so they're outside. They absolutely have to win this game. I think they are a little healthier than they were a few weeks ago, but I still think Thomas Walker is going to have enough to get this win and maybe put a stamp on getting in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that if Twin Springs was 100% healthy, I think this would be a really incredible game. Because they've dealt with injuries so much, I'm going to make it a clean sweep for Thomas Walker. Another big game in Region 1D, Patrick Henry at Chilhowie. When the season started, I don't think we would be having this conversation, but both these teams kind of need this game, Casey.
Well, like Steve said, this is another one. I think Patrick Henry 8th, Chilhowie 9th in the standings. So really, I think, again, the loser of this game will have a hard time making it in the playoffs. Chilhowie turned some heads last week, almost beating Rye Cove at Rye Cove. They went for a late 2-point conversion, and the win did not get it, lost by 1. Patrick Henry, meanwhile, they've had some close games. They lost to Honaker last week. Based on what Chilhowie did, no one else has played Rye Cove like that other than Lee High all season, who's a 2A school. So I'm going to take Chilhowie at home. I think that positive momentum, even off a loss, what they showed against Rye Cove, if they do that, they can win against pretty much anybody at their level. I'll take the Warriors.
Yeah, Patrick Henry, I believe, opened the season against Rye Cove as well and lost by 6, but that was before all the injuries came to Rye Cove. That was before all the injuries came to Patrick Henry. The Rebels have lost 3 in a row. That game with Chilhowie and Rye Cove certainly caught my attention last week. You go to 4 seconds left and the 2-point conversion doesn't go. I just think Chilhowie at home, I think Chilhowie will get the job done against the Rebels.
I think that the feeling is Chilhowie feels like they're a little bit more on the upswing. Patrick Henry with the injuries and just all that they lost from a season ago kind of feels they're on the downward swing. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Chilhowie as well. We have all picked the same pick so far. This is not as exciting as I thought it was going to be. Final game, let's see what happens here if somebody mixes it up. This is the de facto Mountain 7 championship game. Abingdon at Union. Casey, you're up first.
Well, Abingdon, the latest power rankings, they are #1 in Region 3D, so the Falcons ascending past Lord Botetourt. Their only loss was to Tennessee High, a 5A school from Tennessee. Union has 2 losses to Science Hill, 6A school in Tennessee, and then Graham by 1 point. This game at Bullitt Park, you look at common opponent with Ridgeview. Union won by 24. Abingdon just beat Ridgeview by 3. Off a bye week at Bullitt Park, I am not picking against Union. Although Abingdon has won many times at Bullitt Park. They're the one team that has won a couple times with Coach Ambergy, but I think Union gets the win.
Well, it shapes up to be a defensive battle. Neither team has allowed over 100 points all season. In fact, Abingdon last week holds Ryan O'Quinn from Ridgeview under 100 yards through the air. Owen Barr, 34 rushes, 196 yards, just was the workhorse for the Falcons. Union, though, has a little bit more offensive diversity, I think, and I think that's the difference. Bears win and win the Mountain 7.
This feels like this might be, that's great grammar. This feels like this could be like a 10-7 or 7-6 game just based on how good these defenses are. I really would like to have some more drama this week, but I am also going to pick Union in this one. All right, time for some YouTube exclusive picks, starting with a game that will be for a district championship in Tennessee, Cosby at North Greene. Casey.
Yeah, really exciting for North Greene. Both of these teams with close wins at Cloudland to set up a winner-take-all game. So both of these teams will have a home playoff game no matter what happens on Friday night. But I looked at the schedules for both of these teams. I think I'm going to just give the slight edge, though, to Cosby, even though this game is on the road. I think the Eagles a little more offensive output, what I've seen from the numbers, so I'm going to go with Cosby.
Neither of these teams has ever won a region title. And history's for Cosby, which dates back to 1991. North Greene dates back to 1975. In fact, it took 10 years for North Greene to win 6 games and match its win total from this year, which ties the school record set back in 2011. Cosby with 7 wins, only the second time the Eagles have won 7 games in a regular season. It is at North Greene, it is on the Tundra, but as Casey mentioned, that mattered not in either game at Cloudland. I agree with Casey on the schedule, the schedule analysis, and I'll take the Eagles slightly at North Greene on the road.
Oh, boo, I'm picking the local team. I'm picking North Greene. Why not? They've had a magical season out there on the Tundra. I love what Coach Eric Tilson is doing there at North Greene. I'm taking the Huskies. Boo on both of you all. All right, next one is what has historically been one of the greatest rivalries in the smaller classes in Tennessee in our area. It's been kind of a tough season for Hampton, but they've brought it on lately. Steve, who do you like between Hampton and South Greene?
Well, both of these teams, their playoff outlooks are pretty well set. South Greene will be the #1 seed out of the region. Hampton, with the win and a big upset by Cumberland Gap of Eagleton Academy, could avoid a trip to York Institute next week, but overall South Greene has won 7 in a row. Hampton, Dominic Burleson, another big game. I think the 2 running backs, Burleson and Nat Radar for South Greene, I think they ran for like a combined mile last week. Both of them well over 200 yards. South Greene's just got a little bit more. I like that offensive versatility, and I like the Rebels in this one.
I thought Hampton was maybe trending to possibly being able to pull this upset, but when they lost to Eagleton Academy pretty handily at ETSU last week, I was like, okay, maybe, that those first couple games they had back on the field, maybe against a little lesser competition. South Greene, even though they have nothing to play for, if they did lose this game, they would share the region championship with Happy Valley, pending the Happy Valley wins. I think the Rebels win this outright. And yeah, several years ago, this was the region championship game, but not this year. But I think South Greene wins at home over Hampton.
One thing I know about this rivalry, much like some of the ones we discussed on the TV version, you never really know what's going to happen. Both these teams bring it when they play each other. I think it's going to make it really interesting. I think it might be a little closer than people expect it to be, but I'm with Steve. I just think South Greene's offense is so much more diverse than Hampton. They rely too much on the running game, so I'm going to give the nod to the Rebels as well. Holston at Rural Retreat, a big one in 1D in Virginia. Casey, Holston coming off that big win over Johnson County last week. Yeah,
of course, none of us picked them, and I heard our interview with Coach Akers after the game. I don't think many people picked, I don't know anyone that picked, I think you did this on your, we did it on your website, that game?
Holston, Johnson County, yes.
Yeah, I don't think anybody picked Holston on it. Yeah, all the people we have on that as well. So they really could play us against the world in that one. Holston actually passed Eastside after that win. So they are second in the 2D standings. They leapfrogged Eastside. Rural Retreat is 5th. So if Holston wins this game, I think they rubber stamp themselves as a chance for possibly multiple home playoff games. I'm going to go with Holston. I picked against them a few times this year. It hasn't come to fruition for me, so I'm going to not make the same mistake for like a 3rd or 4th time. I'm taking Holston.
Yeah. Rural Retreat quarterback Chaz Penwright threw 3 touchdowns to 3 different receivers last week against Northwood. We already talked about Holston rushing for 300 yards in that win at Johnson County last week, but I just think Rural Retreat, common opponent here was Patrick Henry, who played both back-to-back. Rural Retreat won handily. Holston won by just 5 over the Rebels. I will take the Indians of Rural Retreat.
I'm going with Holston. You mentioned they jumped up in the PowerPoints. I actually jumped them up over them in our Top 5 Tuesday rankings as well, because I was just really impressed with that win. I know that Johnson County was banged up, but Holston has been quietly maybe the most consistent team that nobody is talking about in the area. I love what they're doing out there in Damascus. I'm going to join Casey and pick Holston in this one. All right. Hope you got your fill of what is going to be a great schedule of high school football on Friday. You can get a recap of it all on Friday Night Huddle, 11:15 on WCYB.